All right, good evening and welcome to Axiom Flux, Season 2, Episode 11. Today's date is the 10th of January 2016, and tonight's topic is abundance and food wastage. I've got with me tonight Bok, and good evening, Bok.
Good evening, Andy. Good evening, listeners.
Good to hear you, Bok. So tonight's episode topic, like I say, is to do with the abundance that we're told there's a lack of abundance. We've got too many people on the planet, and there just ain't enough of anything. So hopefully we do a bit of debunking about that. So without further ado, I should have done this to begin with, but there we go. I can present to everyone. I'm going to kick us off with an article from the Daily Mail Online, believe it or not. But anyway, it's something we all know about, but it needs to be reiterated and talked about because it tends to get forgotten. We all know about this, but well, most people do. Perhaps some people don't, but. Anyway, it's about the wastage in the UK as regards to supermarkets, and it's just plain stupidness. You can't really call it anything else than that. And anyway, the article is too ugly for the supermarket. Up to 40% of Britain's fruit and vegetable never reaches the shelves because it doesn't look good enough. Report reveals many crops considered too ugly for human consumption. Food is edible, but shoppers won't accept unsightly produce on the shelves. Households waste an additional 7.5 million tonnes of food a year. This waste is costing an average of £680 per family. I presume that's a year, it reveals. By the Daily Mail, I think I mentioned that. Anyway, it says up to 40% of fruit or vegetable crops never make it onto the plates because they are ugly. A report reveals. Shoppers are so unprepared to accept odd size, shapes or marks that farms use perfectly edible produce as animal feed or plough it back into the ground. Households also contribute to half of the 15 million tonnes of food that is wasted annually, says the report for the UK's Global Food Security Programme. Now, that's perfectly good stuff. Wasted up to 40% of fruit and vegetables. It's too ugly for supermarket shelves, the report has revealed. Anyway, picky 2/5 of all crops never make it to the supermarket because consumers are unprepared to accept ugly fruit and vegetable. The report showed that the average household throws away more than 5 kilos, £11 food per week, and nearly 2/3 of that waste is avoidable. The waste costs £480 a year per household on average and £680 per family. Households throw away 1/5 of the food they buy, washing it for reasons ranging from cooking and preparing to too much food. Wasting it for reasons ranging from cooking and preparing too much food to not using it in time before it goes off, the study showed. Consumption and initial production are the areas where the majority of food is wasted in the UK, the study says. Retailers respond to demands by consumers for high quality food by imposing standards that can lead to much of the crop being wasted. But some progress is being made with supermarkets marketing odd shapes and sizes for fruit and vegetables. There's also growing evidence that more UK consumers are prepared to accept ugly fruit and vegetables amid concerns over sustainable increase in food prices, the research said. In developed countries, much of the loss of food occurs during post-harvesting storage, processing and packaging. Tackling waste globally is a major part of the action needed to provide enough food to feed a growing world population sustainably and tackle hunger, which affects 1 in 8 people worldwide, the report said. Instead, the UK grow produce, which might be wrong size or shape or is blemishes, often used for animal feed or is simply ploughed back into the ground. even though it's edible. Yeah. There we are, all that lovely fruit and veg all going back in the ground or thrown away. Around a third of food produce globally is lost or wasted. Around 1/3, blimey. Professor Tim Benton, global food security champion, said over 5 million people in the UK live in deep poverty, where basic food provision is a daily challenge. Nearly 400,000 people needed support from food banks last year, according to the Trust of Trust. At the same time, 15 million tonnes of food is wasted annually, with nearly half discarded with UK households. Reducing the scale of losses and waste throughout the entire food system is a crucial step towards improving global food security. The report highlights priorities for research to help reduce food waste, including improving harvesting and packaging technologies, good seasonal weather prediction, and new ways to produce food waste within the home. There you go. There's a lot of people say a few things about this, you know. This guy says here, the only food waste should be the peels and rinds, not the whole fruit or vegetable. Banana peels, etc., should be composted, not landfilled. Food waste in landfills creates methane gas, which is 22 times more harmful than carbon dioxide. Improve air quality, increase landfill life, and make nutrient-rich soil by composting it. It's time to stop being wasteful and start teaching sustainability to our children. Basically, there was a little bit up here where it said about food banks. Now, I can't remember if I read it here, but or somebody told me that food banks don't accept fresh fruit, I've heard, or vegetables or something. I don't know whether PJ told me that or somebody else, but I don't know what that's about. But yeah, it's they say they're doing things about it. I know a chap that has a fruit farm and he sells apples to a large conglomerate, and basically he says that over half of these apples that he sends off to him, they're no good. And he can only take even sometimes about a third of his crop because of the right colour and the right shape and the right size and whatever. And the wastages, he has to literally dump them. He's not, because of the contract with the supermarket, he cannot sell them or move them on. So he has to literally dump them. So, and this is just recently, last year. So this problem they're talking about is still going on today. So it's not been not been resolved. So there you go. But I mean, that's just one of the many wastages of food in this country, and it's ridiculous, isn't it? Don't you think?
Yeah, I think you're right, Andy. Because most often in the grocery stores, you'll see a donation area for food banks and such, and they own dry or canned food. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So I guess I don't know what their argument would be. That was it because it won't keep or something like that. I don't know. I've never been to a food bank. I'm lucky enough not to have to go to a food bank, but I did hear that. So but there we are. I mean, it's just one of many articles I could have pulled up. The wastage is ridiculous, and it's all to do with corporates, rules, regulations, and whatever. I would probably go as much as it's over half the food and produce gets wasted in this country because of corporate rules, basically. Anyway, I'll move on to perhaps it's not so much in this country, it's other countries, and this is again corporate greed. This all stems from just the handful of big corporations that seem to have shanghaied everything in the world, in the Western world, and obviously in Africa, for instance. This is a PDF. It's got quite a bit in it, so I'll get on with it. But it's Stop the Corporate Takeover of African Food. It's UK governments is helping corporations take over African agriculture in the name of tackling hunger. This will help big business make vast profits, while small-scale farmers risk losing control of their land, livelihoods, and ability to feed themselves and their communities. It's time the UK government supported food sovereignty for people in Africa, not corporate profit. And here we go. The scramble for Africa's food system. UK aid money is funding a corporate takeover of African agriculture in the same way as the Europeans colonised much of the continent in the 19th century. Large corporations are now looking for raw materials, land and labour. The UK and other rich countries are promoting initiatives that will guarantee vast profit for these companies under the guise of tackling hunger and poverty. For example, in 2012, the G8 launched the new Alliance for Food Security and Nutrition. The new alliance promised to boost farming in African countries whose governments have signed up to the initiative. Alongside aid from G8 countries, large corporations pledged to invest in African agriculture. In return, African countries are required to reform land, seed and trade rules to suit the needs of big business. What is wrong with corporate-led agriculture? Large corporations are gaining increasing power over the global food system at the expense of small-scale farmers. Around the world, small-scale farmers have lost their land to large corporations and foreign investors, or become dependent on corporations for farming inputs like seeds. Big business have taken control of markets, squeezing many small-scale farmers out of their livelihoods. Yet almost 1 billion people remain chronically malnourished worldwide, partly because the corporate-controlled food system prioritizes profit over providing nutritious and accessible food for the poor communities. Big agribusiness is also bad news for the planet. Intensive planting and harvesting, large-scale growth of single crops, and use of chemical fertilizers have damaged ecosystems, reduced biodiversity, and degraded soil. Industrial farming is now a key contributor to climate change due to fossil fuel use and deforestation. Who is the new alliance? G8 countries, these include Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, Russia, UK and US, alongside the European Union. G8 countries have pledged billions of pounds in aid. As of early 2014, the UK have pledged 600 million. African countries, these include Burkina Faso, Cote d'Ivoire, Ethiopia, Ghana, Mozambique, Tanzania, Benin, Malawi, Nigeria and Senegal. They've signed up to receive investment and aid. Corporations, over 50 multinational corporations are pledging investments, including UK-based global consumer goods giant Unilever and British alcohol drinks companies Diageo and SABMiller. African companies are also pledging investments. The practical results of the recent surge in investment in African agriculture expose the empty rhetoric of African food security. Blatant land grabs are well known across the continent. Meanwhile, actual farmers are separated from land and the only realistic option for a livelihood. Statement by the civil society groups in Africa 2013. So feeding corporate profit. Here we go. G8's new alliance and similar initiatives claim to improve access to food and nutrition for Africa's states. Yet in reality, they will shift control of the food system away from the small-scale farmers and local communities and into the hands of big business. Here are some of the ways that the new alliance is helping to feed corporate profit. Many of the African countries, controlling seeds, very important. Many of the African countries signed up to the new alliance are making changes to their laws which make it easier for large seed companies to operate. Corporate seeds, which include genetically modified GM seeds, are patented. This means farmers are prevented from the age-old practice of saving and using seeds the following year. Small-scale farmers are often locked into contracts to buy seeds again from the same company, leading to indebtedness and poverty. Changes in seed laws could also mean that small-scale farmers lose their freedom to save and exchange their own varieties of seeds, which they've done for generations. Removing trade regulations. In return for new alliance investments, some African governments are removing trade regulations. For example, Ethiopia, Malawi and Tanzania have pledged to stop using export bans. These bans can help governments keep enough staple food in the country to feed their populations, especially in times of emergencies. Export crops. Many corporations in the New Alliance have pledged to invest in crops intended for export, such as coffee, tobacco, biofuel crops. These crops are grown for profit, not nutrition. They are not intended for local consumption and instead force countries to rely on volatile international markets for food. Prices can become unpredictable and poor consumers can struggle to afford to eat. Land grabbing. African states in the New Alliance are making changes to their land rules that will open the door for corporations and foreign investors to take control of land and the resources on it. This is known as land grabbing throughout Africa. Many communities have lost land to corporations, depriving them of their livelihoods and natural resources. Mozambique has already leased over 20% of its agricultural land to companies and foreign investors. Ethiopia has leased over 8%, yet both countries, along with others, are making policy changes that will help corporations acquire more land. Agricultural growth corridors, a wholesale corporate takeover. As part of the New Alliance and other initiatives, countries including Ethiopia, Mozambique and Tanzania are creating zones for large-scale farms to grow cash crops and developing the infrastructure for their export. These zones are known as growth corridors. They put small-scale farmers' land and livelihoods at risk. In Tanzania, the Southern Agricultural Growth Corridor, SAGGOT, is set to cover 7.5 million hectares of farmland. Although the Tanzanian government supports the project, it has warned of land grabs by corporations and a risk to farmers' livelihoods in the SAGGOT region. Well, it says here, resisting corporate control. The UN estimates that there is enough food being produced worldwide to feed 12 billion people. Right, we got that. 12 billion people. Now, their estimate is that there's 7 billion people, the population of the Earth. But anyway, that's the UN's own figures. Okay? They say there's enough food to easily feed 12 billion. Global hunger stems not from the lack of food or a growing population, but how food is controlled and distributed. Where food is grown purely for global markets by corporations, it reaches those who can afford it and profits those who are in control. Small-scale farmers produce 70% of the world's food. Around 80% of the farms in sub-Saharan Africa are small-scale. Many farmers in Africa currently struggle to make an income, and many are in poverty. This is partly because they do not have the government support they need to operate. They cannot compete with the large corporations who control their resources and the markets they sell to. But in some countries, government support and market regulation, along with aid, has helped make small-scale farming a secure and decent livelihood. Policies that support small-scale environment-friendly farming practices will help farmers in Brazil and Cuba to increase yield sustainable. Land reform and strong land rights for smallholders, like in Venezuela, can also help small-scale farmers. Around the world, small-scale farmers and activists, including international peasant movement La Via Campesina, are calling for food sovereignty. This is a more just and sustainable food system in which food is considered a right, not just as a commodity. Control of food and resources lie with those who produce and consume food, and farming works in balance with nature. These groups are demanding that small-scale farming that feeds the majority of the world's population is protected from corporate takeover. Cool. That would be nice. Around the world, farmers and activists are organising for food sovereignty against the corporate takeover of the food system. In 2030, the Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa and almost 100 African civil society groups called on the G8 to end its new wave of colonialism through initiatives like the New Alliance that threaten the flow of royalties out of Africa into the hands of multinational corporations. WDM is standing in solidarity with these groups in Africa and who are demanding an end to corporate takeover of agriculture. We're calling on the UK government to stop funding the G8's new alliance for food security and nutrition and instead support food sovereignty. Hear, hear. Food sovereignty is the fundamental right of all peoples, nations and states to control food and agriculture systems and policies, ensuring everyone has adequate, affordable, nutritious and culturally appropriate food. Food sovereignty rests control over our commons back into the hands of the people. That's the International Peasant Movement, La Via Campesina, Jakarta 2013. There we are. So what can you do? Oh, we don't want that, do we? What can you do? Well, the UK government must stop using aid to support the corporate takeover of African agriculture. The UK is currently pushing the agenda which promotes profit for big business at the expense of small-scale farmers already feed most of the population. Instead, UK aid should be directed to where it best helps people out of poverty. This includes supporting Africa's small-scale farmers to grow food sustainably and enable local communities to control their own food systems. WDM is calling on the UK government to stop its funding and support for pro-corporate initiatives like the G8's new Alliance for Food Security and Nutrition, introduce policies that support food sovereignty. You can help stop the corporate takeover of Africa's agriculture. To find out how you can take action for updates, visit www.wdm.org.uk/food or search agribusiness on Twitter. The World Development Movement, WDM, campaigns for a world without poverty and injustice. We work in solidarity with activists around the world to tackle the cause of poverty. We research and promote positive alternatives that puts the rights of poor communities before interests of big business. Join WDM. There's all the information there. So, Mr. Bono, I wonder if you'd get behind food sovereignty rather than the G8's consortium. I think not, Mr. Bono of U2. No. Shall I hold my breath? I wonder if he would get involved with something like this, Bok. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think, not under the corporate model, Andy. I think I don't think the corporations should be involved in food or in health, as far as I'm concerned.
No.
I think people can do everything on a grassroots level. I think industrial agriculture and farming has caused more damage than any other means towards the environment, including all this carbon tax, political fiction and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, if we keep following this corporate model, it'll literally just it's going to ruin all the climate and soil conditions as we're doing now. And the answer is just start to grow trees and plants, and you put that back into the soil.
You think like,
eh?
Yeah, do you think like that article says that, you know, it should be the small scale local farmer that should be feeding the local people, basically? Yeah. I mean,
I think if we could go teach some of these people about permanent and the no-till system,
yeah,
we could learn a lot about soil health and ecology. This thing,
yeah,
it's an opposite way of doing things, and this way is abundant.
yeah, yeah. I just think like you, there really is no room for big corporations when it comes to. I just feel that people are quite capable of feeding themselves, and you know, if it's just left to local communities and local farmers and local produce, everybody would get to eat much more healthier, more of the food that we really want anyway. And it's just a win-win-win situation for local economy and everything. But we all know what the problem is, Bok, and it's always been It's always been large corporate greed.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think everybody knows this, surely.
I mean, on a realistic level, I think if you take 2 or 3 countries out of the entire countries of all of Africa, and they were in a situation where they were able to food, and if you grow it abundantly with the permaculture style, there's enough food to feed the entire continent.
Well, wasn't Zimbabwe the breadbasket of Africa, apparently, in its heyday?
Right.
Yeah. You know, these yeah, I really do think it's time. I mean, if it takes a world financial collapse, then bring it on, I say, because I think the way the world's going, you know, as that article depicted, that even the United Nations own figures say there's more than enough to feed 12 billion people quite easily, and yet people are starving to death. And it can only be that the present model of large, a handful of large corporations owning everything and depict and you know, making all the rules and that, it don't bloody work. So, I mean, me personally, a lot of people say, well, you know, oh, I need this, I need to have my job and my car and all this silly nonsense, and I can't, I need to pay my mortgage and all this bullshit. I work for one of these international corporations that keep the African people down, while at the same time, you know, my company I work for makes a handful of money, and I need that for my job. Well, bollocks, it's time your job went. Sorry, that's it. You know, because having jobs like that, which serves a corporate cartel that are suppressing and watch people starve in the world, people are going to wake up to this and get some spine and mould back in them, because, you know, this is all going down the pan fast, and it's not just going to be people losing their cars and houses and all the rest, because the financial markets are ready to implode anyway. So I say bring it on and let people start going back to grassroots community living. I sod it, you know. That's what I think. Anyway.
I mean, they can't even properly feed people in the big cities.
No.
Nutritionally speaking, I mean, they can't take care of things at home. So why do they think they can walk into these other areas?
No, that's right. I mean, look at the food banks in the UK. How many are there? 400, 500, 600? I don't know. Dozens every year, new ones. And, you know, people in the, I don't know, ranked 4th or 5th best economy in the world. I've got people living on the streets and having to go to a food bank to feed themselves. And then if you look in America, oh, blimey, there's some big old blooming cities gone down the drain. You know, where Detroit springs to mind, Motor City. You know, the home of Motown. Look at that now. Look at that place now. It's completely void of anything, isn't it? It's a ghost city. So, yeah, obviously corporatism just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Certainly doesn't serve humanity well.
It takes less time and energy and resources just to go set up, perhaps some of these people to go grow their own food.
Yeah.
Go teach them a little bit about permaculture, and a few people could grow enough food for the whole food bank.
Absolutely. This is where tonight's little talk we're having about abundance and food wastage. The corporates are the biggest waste of everything. They are the ones that waste the most. Across the board, energy, resources, food, everything. And it's all done deliberately so they can make more numbers in a bank account, which is all fraudulently based, as we know. So, whatever, I mean. So, yeah, I've got no more articles. I mean, I could pull up 1,000. We could pull up loads and loads of them and read personal stories, some of them, and it will all say the same thing. So anyway, I put it over to you. So you've got to highlight the abundant side and the falsehoods that there's just not enough of anything on the world. There's too many people living on this ball or disc, whichever way you look at the world. So over to you, Bob.
Right. Yeah, I think it was a topic, Andy, and I think I can follow that up with talking about one of the solutions being the model of abundance. Contrary to popular belief, there's no shortage of anything on this planet. Whatever you think is something that's rare or expensive, it's just a fictional point of view, which has been woven into the minds of our society. It doesn't really exist. I mean, you can thing like a precious metal like gold, for example. It's valued so high, but yet there's no shortage of gold. I mean, there's gold inside every electronic equipment, cell phones. It's not just something you find in the museums or somebody's treasure chest, right? It's quite abundant. And it's been mined for thousands and thousands of years. There's enough of everything that everyone could have some. It's like, when they set the price on something like gold at whatever it's valued at these days, I don't know, $1,500 or $1,700 a troy ounce. These are just numbers that somebody has made up. These are fictional. The person who hoards all the gold, he sets the price. So that's just one example. Abundance. Another one I want to talk about is water. It's impossible to have a shortage of water on this planet. There's 72% water, and even in the areas that we were told about, growing up is in the Middle East, like Saudi Arabia, they would tell us, oh, they have a shortage of fresh water. Surrounded by freshwater lakes here where we live, but that doesn't mean they don't have access to water. I mean, desalination of salt water and people did it for thousands of years to survive. In fact, it was a healthy process because you separate the good drinking water, then you get left with the salt. Another one here was, there's desalination techniques that you can use that do not require. You don't need a nuclear power plant to facilitate, like a factory to do this. Nature works on an infinite fractal, not a fictional fractal. And unfortunately, in our world today, we live in a fictional fractal. Every bit, it's 1,000. And I think the permaculture, no dig, sustainable planting and farming practices are going to be a key solution to anyone's future. And the next thing I want to talk, so there's no shortage of food on this planet, as Andy was saying. So why are all the discrepancies with Africa and stuff going on at home? It just doesn't make sense. We shouldn't have to import as much as we do. The main fiction of agriculture is that food is hard and expensive to grow. Well, it's a biodiversive environment. There's no shortage in a healthy forest. What is a healthy forest? It's been left to grow. Man hasn't really interrupted. It's now there's a small woodlot forest near me, which is somewhere I visit often, and what I observe in there is that there's cedars, willows, and birches and stuff like that in certain areas, and then you walk around in the higher areas where there's not as much water, and you find trees, and then in the area where there's in between, you'll see like maples and oaks and whatnot, and all the different plants and different types of natural weeds and whatnot, the fungal. There's a huge diversity in there, and it's self-balanced. Nobody comes in there and throws fertilizer. Nobody trims anything. It thrives, and it's amazing. It's just the smallest little wood lot, and it's a great conservation here. So I would say invest in your soil. It will repay, or I should put that more correctly, it will reward you infinitely. Just going through my notes here. Yeah, so the point I'm making, the forest is abundant, and it doesn't need man's interjection. It just needs us to observe it and to learn how nature does it, and we need to work with that model. Nature has a perfect system. Nothing is random. Only a fool who believes in fiction thinks that intervention that nature can't survive. And another thing I wanted to point out is something that I've noticed is the way they plant trees in front of homes and in front of like the shopping malls and stores. They're always just planted in this like a single row fashion, and I think it's just ridiculous. They need to maximize every area of every square inch of their parking lot. Yet to make people feel good, they'll pop a couple of trees here and there. It's like, stop growing them that way. Grow them in patches, and throw like a few different types of native plants and trees, and throw a bunch of wood chips down there. You don't have to do a thing, and it'll look more attractive. And in fact, I want to share a picture about that here. Which one was this? I think it was this one. You see that, Andy?
Yes, Bok, I can see it.
Yeah, I mean, this is the type of thing I'm talking about. I mean, we see this every day, and we don't think twice about this. And the sad thing is like, people think that this is more beautiful than a forest. This is just like a decorative statement is all it is. It's like, if anything, when you grow trees like this, it's kind of cruelty. It's like keeping an elephant in a small zoo. It's I just don't like that. Yeah, for example, I mean, some of the streets that you can drive by in some residential areas, and the whole street, they plant the same type of tree. I just look at that and it goes, something does not make sense. we need to grow in patches and diversity because that's what nature does. And why I suggest you grow them in patches is because that's the reason why a forest works that way, is because the outer of the trees, they act as a protective barrier with, when the cold and the elements get hard or the heat or whatever conditions they have to put up with, the outer ones will, they'll do their job to protect the rest of the inside. So a forest will do this naturally. Kind of like that. I remember there was a movie a bunch of years ago. I didn't watch the movie, but I remember it was like a 3-hour movie or something, and it was all about the penguins. And if there's one thing you can learn from them is like how they survive and stay warm in those freezing, Arctic temperatures. Is a circle forms on the outside of all those penguins, and they stay there and bear the cold for a while, and then they rotate. So that's how they survive. So nature has a system. Yeah, you don't need, there's nobody there, directing traffic, telling the forest what to do and telling these penguins what to do. It's like, you just got to leave them alone. And a lot of this relates to our health and our immune systems because we're influenced from our local environment. Wherever you live, nature will provide you the proper food and medicines to help support your immune system. And another thing I observed was when we see a big area of just lawn grass, and we stopped using fertilizers for residential lawns, which is a good thing, which is a great thing. But then what you see is you'll see they just get ridden by dandelions and other weeds, and people freak out. And when I walk over to a wild plain grass area, you know what? You'd be lucky if you can find like one dandelion in a square kilometer or a square mile. And the reason is because once man has disturbed the soil, now nature's got to send all its things back in there to fix it and to try to restore the health of the soil. So that's what these dandelions and all these weeds and stuff, when they pop up, that's what they're doing. They're there to restore the health. That's the system of nature. And that's why it's really important to understand about try not to disturb the soil. You never want to dig unless you have to. You just want to build layers on top of the soil with wood chips and mulch and compost, and just let nature do the work. You can stop using chemical fertilizers and stop using chemical pesticides. Just give the soil what it needs, and it'll take care of itself. You'll actually run into less problems with bugs and pests, because once you have healthy soil, you have healthy trees and healthy plants. Well, then now all those pests are out of a job, because their job is to go in there and just attack the weak ones, and that's the way nature works. So healthy soil not only helps the environment, it helps provide us healthy, nutrient-dense food. And it doesn't need to be watched. You just put the wood chips down, you put the mulch down, you put your compost down, any other clippings, natural food waste that you have, you can add it to it. And you don't have to do anything. You just walk away and let nature do its job. You can even go super Gandhi if you want. It's amazing what nature can do. It can balance up It can replace a plethora of minerals and healthy microbial life back into the soil. We shouldn't be worried about quantity. When we have abundance, we should quality. We want quality cell phones. We want quality shoes. So why not ask for quality food? Why not the environment? Why not ask for, let's turn the fractal fiction around into a fractal of abundance. Start caring. Take as much self-responsibility as you're capable of. If you have opportunity, I would suggest you lawn area in your yard or something. Well, throw some wood chips down on some of it. Start putting something back into the system, into nature's system. And I think that's all I had.
Yeah, okay, Bok. Good stuff. Actually, looking at that picture you've got there of that apartment or apartments, whatever they are, with all that concrete, and it's almost yeah. Look at the comparison between those two photos that you just put up. Do you want to put that other one back up? That's it.
Yeah.
If you would. Yeah. Wow. If I had to take my chances, and if the financial collapse happened, and there's endless chickens and zombies running everywhere, don't know what to do. I'd rather take my chance in that lovely picture you've got up at the moment. I'd rather live there any day. In actual fact, I'd rather live there regardless if there was a financial breakdown, the world goes tits up. There's no comparison. But looking at that picture before you had that apartment, with all the concrete everywhere, with the ridiculous with a couple of trees growing out of the concrete, basically. Or it looks like it. It reminds me.
This is a biodiverse environment, and it changes with the season. It's an amazing thing. Different things come around different times a year. It's not just the trees, even though the trees are very important. And there was one little other one I wanted to share, which was this one. And this is the corporate model. People need to look at this, and they need to be aware and say, this is not right. You're just raping the ground of its nutrients year after year without replacing them. It's not logical to just produce acres and acres and acres of the same thing. And like Andy said, a lot of this goes to waste. As a matter of fact, now most of the corn grown around me here, it's not even for human consumption. It's just ridiculous. People need to wake up to this truth. We need to grow a variety of different things with proper soil. You don't even need to really rotate your crops. Certainly not as much. If you do it nature's way, it's just a win-win situation.
Absolutely. I think that cornfield, I think there's corn on the cob, I think it's got my right glasses on. Anyway, I think it's 40 or 50% of the corn grown in the USA is biofuel now, if I remember rightly. They use it in sticking it in their Humvees and their V8s and all the rest of it. Ride around town.
Because sadly, they had to help the farmers out, and it's not the farmer's fault, because chances are he's unaware of this too. He's living in, and I'll tell you, those guys work hard. They work really, really hard, and when you use a permaculture way, it's extremely less labor intensive. The Garden of Eden documentary, I want to watch that. He maintains his entire property with a garden rake.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no, to grow the way they grow produce is just, it's insane. Labor intensive. You need heavy equipment and machinery. and then they have to go spraying them and watering them all the time. It's a crazy, crazy process just to go produce, tomatoes and such.
Yeah.
And of course, they're not nutrient and mineral dense anymore.
No.
They're devoid of proper nutrition.
Absolutely. That's why I think most people, well, they don't realise it. They're not getting the minerals because it's no longer in the soil, and you can add to the genetically modified seeds and crops to that. On top of all that, you're just really eating nothing of any goodness at all, even if it is grown in some sort of abundance, which it's not. But the thing is, that picture there, like I said, the other picture that you had with the concrete jungle with the trees growing out of it, the apartment block, it reminds me of the 1980s when loads of people were seduced into owning their property in the UK, and everybody went from renting with social housing into buying their social housing up because of one Mrs. T, and they all got seduced into it. And the first things, there was this mad craze, Bok, on cladding, which is the outside of the building, and paving the whole front and back gardens.
Wow.
Absolute madness. And everybody was doing it, and it looked absolutely horrible. Of course, nobody was growing any vegetables anymore, where if you was to just take it back 10, 12 years, 10, 12, 15 years maximum, everybody grew vegetables in those gardens. Yet within as little as 10 to 15 years, most of those places had either they'd concreted it over with hard stand and they put their latest Ford Capri or Cortina on, or put pavement slabs on it. And it was horrible. Everything changed in such a short time because of this ludicrous corporate takeover, privatization, Margaret Thatcher era. It not just destroyed communities, and it destroyed the whole way of life, and it destroyed families. And I've said on there before, when I look back, that was the time when everything really changed, and people just didn't really much grow their stuff anymore. Not on the estates that I grew up on anyway. Just sort of transformed in 10, 15 years. Absolutely incredible. But yeah, it's...
Yeah, I noticed the same trend over here, Andy, when you enlightened me about that.
Yeah.
Was at the time when England was going through these changes, the Sheffield steel plants were closing down, and all these similar things were happening over here. And all of a sudden, all the honest local jobs were just disappearing.
Yeah.
The mom and the dad hardware stores and all that, one by one, it was just getting hijacked with corporate.
Yeah.
Corporate fiction.
Yeah, and it's going to get worse. It's going to get a hell of a lot worse because of the corporate world takeover with these trade agreements. It's the TPP for the Pacific side and the TTPP, whatever it is for the European side of things. And you're going to be dictated to by some central corporate governance, one global master in Washington or wherever, and you're just really going to be. I'm glad I'm the age I am, Bok. I'm glad I'm mid-50s because if it goes the way that they're predicting and the way that they're rolling out this corporate takeover, which is pretty much taken over now, but world run by the corporates, I don't think I'd like to be here anyway. So I'm glad I'm the age I am. And unfortunately, I've got a lot of young family members who are going to face this, and their children and their children's children. I'm just hoping. I mean, yeah, I hope the whole damn thing blows up. I really do. I hope that the financial Ponzi scheme collapses, as it should have done in 2008. And we should have got back to basics and community a way of life. That's the only saviour. It's for people to go back to local communities, grow their own food, do their own thing. Oh, very quickly, I will touch on something there. What you were saying about, you just lay your compost out and your stuff, and you let nature do its thing, and then plant your vegetables or whatever. My sister-in-law of mine has just got rid of some fir trees, but they've been there for ages. Landlord, they call them, Nick? Leylanders. Quite tall, fast-growing things. Anyway, underneath them, Bok, you could sink your hand down and down, and this beautiful black compost. It was the best thing you couldn't buy, and it was just the gradual falling down and growing of the fir trees was just replenishing it underneath. And really, if you grew vegetables underneath there, a bit of light and made a bit of light, you wouldn't have to do anything. You wouldn't have to turn it over. It's tilling the land fallacy and all the rest of it. So I know exactly what you're on about. If left, you can just basically top it up now and then with whatever, and it'll take care of itself. So yeah, but all interesting stuff, Bok. And I think enough people are not speaking about this. Just on social media and alternative stuff, you don't hear too much about it. You get people who say, "Oh, grow your own vegetables," and that's about it. They don't go into depth with it more, and that's the only way. And that goes from continent to country to country and continent to continent. And the communism just doesn't work. It's not going to work, and it's only it does for a handful of people, as we know. So.
Right. It's a responsibility, we need to take back. Otherwise, the corporate version is just going to get worse.
Oh, absolutely. You've got to, first of all, people have got to start to be some self-responsible.
Absolutely.
Number one is you've got to be responsible for yourself. I mean, people look at this corporate world they live in. They've got insurances for this, insurances for that, or licenses for this and licenses for that. And, nanny. Well, get rid of nanny. That's what I say. Get rid of nanny. Who would want a nanny? I mean, grow up, for crying out loud. I mean, car insurances, people say, it's being responsible. That's bullshit. What insurances just means that, you want somebody else to clean up your crap. If you have an accident or you flood damage or something, you cause a problem because you're not being self-responsible in the first place. You want somebody else to clean up. I've got insurance. Oh, they can pay for that. I can smash the car up. I can do this. But anyway, I'm going on again, going into an epi there. But you've got self-responsibility. It starts with oneself, and there we go. Stop running to nanny. That's what I say. Nanny government. Yeah. Okay, but it's been fun. Have you got anything else you would like to add before we wrap it up?
That's it, Andy.
Okay, mate. Well, it's been enjoyable. Maybe we can revisit this because we've only just touched on it. Perhaps we can expand on ideas. I mean, people who haven't got patio, you can still use. You can grow vegetables in buckets and all sorts of things. You don't even have to have a big garden and rotivate it and till it and all that. That's all unnecessary, really. But even if you've just got concrete to backyard, you can still feed yourself, given a bit of imagination, a bit of creativity. It's we can all do this. But anyway, we'll visit, I'm sure, many more times about this book in the future, hopefully. Maybe I'll do a few videos because I'm going to do some very basic stuff myself this year. But I started last year, but I'm going to extend and go a bit more in depth with it, maybe we can start putting some videos up of what we're doing. I live in an apartment, and I intend to feed myself off my own vegetables, so totally. And I don't even have a garden, so hopefully I'll do a few interesting videos, and there's no excuse. So we'll see how it goes. Cheers, Bob. Thanks for the chat. Interesting stuff as usual. Until next time. Cheers.
Thank you, Andy.